Howdy chaps, and welcome back to another fantastic episode where we are in lockdown. However, you might notice there's been a gap in videos. It's because world events. But anyway, I have been tinkering, and we are going to attempt to band-aid this Commodore. Oh yes, I found the knock, and Rodney was in fact wanting to be let out. I'll show you a little clip in a second of what I found yesterday and some lovely photos of the bearings. One of these is not like the other. Right, now if you see by that, one of them was not playing ball, and the other ones are not terribly flash. I'm not doing the main bearings on this because I'm pretty sure this motor isn't going to live very long, but all we're doing is attempting to get it to live long enough to get it through Regency and get it back on the road, and then we will do an engine conversion to this car once it's a registered car again, and put an LFX in it, because this is an LLT. These are the bad 3.6s apparently. They were the go fast ones at the time, but they are kind of renowned for doing this. And this car has had, I'm pretty sure it's had maintenance and has missed one oil change. So I'll flip the camera around and show you the bearings up close. Well, I don't have to because you've seen it, but you know, I'll show you what I'm going to get up to. Alrighty, so here we have, now you might have a bit of wind, I'm using my phone this time. So this bearing, no joke, I had to chisel that off of the crank. I didn't damage the crank any worse than it already is, but that was pretty much welded onto the crank, and these are razor sharp. But honestly, I was actually stunned to find bearing material in there at all, let alone the two halves. And the fact that they're still in there would explain why when this engine was cold that it didn't actually knock. These are toasted. This is probably what they looked like just before they went I'm out of here, guys. So I'm going to put a set in. I'm not doing the mains because, well, that's an engine out job, and I am not doing that. I am not doing it. You can't make me. All we're going to try and do is just, it's a band-aid. That's all we're doing. The motor still runs. The, you know, I'll admit the oil filter looked like you could put it as a Christmas tree decoration. And here she is here. It's hard to see, ironically. There's some bits. Yeah, so that is just chockers full of sparkles. So far at this point in time, I've got front wheels off. I've had to undo the steering rack and shift it forward on the car to be able to free up the sump, because the sump is a very tight fitting piece of equipment in there and it only just fits out. But once I set up some lights and get myself a bit better set up, and I'll cut some sandpaper down to smaller sizes, we can get under there and show you the business. What I'm going to do is sand the crank with 1000, 2000, a scotchy, and try and some car polish because it's also an abrasive, and try and get the crank back to something that's shiny. And then we're putting 1540 oil in it, probably because the bearing clearances are going to be really wide, and the motor is a bit sad. So the motor is destined to never be in here forever, so we're going to band-aid it up, get it running, get it through Regency. I'll fix the dents and the damage. That is nothing. And then we will pluck the motor and either live dangerously and put an LS in it, or we'll put an LFX in it, which is the late, very, very late 205 kilowatt V6s. Now, I have to say, people badmouth these engines. I blame the people who own them, So if you maintain this engine and you do your timing chains on intervals, this is an incredibly good engine. Very powerful, very capable, very fuel efficient. They just get a bad rap because people don't ever maintain them the way they're supposed to be. And if you miss one oil change, you pretty much kill them. Like this. They can run themselves out of oil as well. Holdens do that a little bit, I found. I've definitely had an LS that used to run itself out of oil. So, I'm going to get set up in a second and get under there and rip the sump off and catch you up in a second. Alright kids, so we're upside down at the moment. I don't know which way this is going to film, to be perfectly honest, but this guy was the one who didn't play ball, so I'm going to do... And, you know, people freak out about these motors. I don't think they're that bad. Sure, they seem a bit daunting, but it's still the same basic technology as the old school stuff, so I don't think there's a problem to have a go at it yourself. So, this little guy out of here we go. So, that side I don't really have to do much to, because I want it to be a bit grippy. This is the guy that we're going to need to make a bit smoother. It's probably because that bit's the bit that does the spinning. So what I'm going to do in a second, so we just clean it a little bit and cut some memory paper, push the piston back up the hole and put a piece around it and just backwards and forwards it until it's looking a little less garbage. I don't really know. This one's still well, I'll leave that in for now. That one, the other bearing that hadn't spun, doesn't look offensive actually. So we've got to do this one, this guy, this is the bad one, this one, and this one. And then put it all back together and put some oil in it and hope to the man upstairs that it's still got... I mean, this engine is toast. Like, honestly, that crank's nearly been material, but if I can band-aid it and it lives a bit longer, I call that a win. And, you know, what's the worst thing going to happen? I'll be up for a motor. I'm probably up for a motor already, so if I can get a bit more life out of this one, then I call that a win. So, unfortunately, I can't film and do this, so I'll have to catch up on interesting intervals. So, enjoy. So this is what I'm up to. I've got the tape wrapped around there with CRC. I was jokingly sitting myself as I sent it back and forth. I was like, oh, you'll carry so much tension in your shoulders. As I run the sandpaper backwards and forwards. I've got 1,000 grit. I'm going to try and get it a little bit less. Oh my god. And then I'll run the 2000 and some polish. And somehow I managed to forget my scotchy. So I guess we're going to run without that. But I know how shiny it's got to be. It's got to be lovely. Yes. It's already actually surprisingly better just with a little bit of 1,000 grit. This is so not the way to do this. Usually you bin the motor and get another one, or you completely rebuild it, get it machined, and have someone professionally do this. But if you're willing to have a go and band-aid it yourself, then feel free to take tips. I'm winging it, so let's see how we go. After much sanding and polishing, I think I'm going to have to give up at that, because I just don't think I'm going to get it perfect. I have got it shiny though. Like, it does have a shine to it again, which is kind of what it's supposed to have, but over the whole thing. It's certainly smooth, but whether or not... yeah. Let's just hope and pray. I think that's what we're going to have to go with. Yeah, it's definitely a lot shinier than it was. So it was more like that guy, and now it's certainly not good. Let's put it that way. But there's nothing on that I would consider to be grippy enough to grab it, and I'm going to put some assembly lube in there, and there's going to be, you know, new oil and filters. So, well, it ran before, and it should in theory run again, but for how long, nobody knows. Remember, this is all a guessing game. So now I'm going to get out one of the new bearings, clean it all up, get out the fancy schmancy $1,000 torque wrench I was lent, and tighten the bugger up, and then change the other ones. It should be fairly straightforward, and then struggle to get the sump back on, which will be less than fun. So moving right along. Alrighty chaps, so I have now replaced all the bearings. I've just seated them now. I haven't actually torqued them up yet, but if we go like this, you can see some of them were actually not offensive. You could almost reuse a couple of them. But then of course, this is going to be really bad camera work today, but most of them are trashed. I would have said 3 of the 6 pistons were probably okay. Weirdly enough, this guy was okay, this was okay, the back one was okay, but actually no, the back one was dead, this one was okay, dead, really dead, okay and okay. But yes, as you can see, I just realised there's yet another hot mark on that crank. So this entire crank was insanely hot, which tells me there was no oil down here at one point. But we now have a new set of bearings in, they're all clean. Man, I hope this works. It is a particularly unfun job. You see the oil pump right there. And you can see the timing cover mounts on the very front. So the sump sits inside a perfect groove. So yeah, now I'm going to rotate this by my little screwdriver through here. I rotate it so I can do up the back two to the correct torque settings and move my way forward. And then we can put the sump back on after I give it a bit of a clean on the inside. I think would be a good idea. And then we can put the harmonic balancer back on. And I don't think I took too much apart from the engine. I just put it all back together. I'm not going to put the steering back in. I'm just going to get the engine back together and see what happens. So yeah, I'll catch up in a second. Do you know you have those moments you're really glad you took the sump off and cleaned the pickup? Because that came out of the pickup. That wasn't in the filter, that was in the pickup. So yeah, I'm obviously going to clean the bottom of the sump. I put the bearings in, they're all torqued up, looking lovely. Clean the surface under there, I was cleaning the sump. I'm going to clean the sump thoroughly, and I pulled the pickup out because it's sort of bolted in there. And I just wanted to make sure the pickup didn't have any junk in it, and I think that was a smart move. I was just doing that, tapping it out, and I'm like, oh my lord. Sparkle, sparkle. Well chaps, I don't know what the time is, I'm sure it's like 2 in the morning, but the harmonic balance is back on, the engine belt's back on, there's a new oil filter, there's new oil, 6.5 litres if you want to be precise. The sump's back on, the bearings are in. The bearings have been given some, whatever I've done with it, assembly lube, just to give them a bit of a head start before the engine oil catches up. It's got thicker than standard oil in it because it's heavily worn. And I think it's moment of truth time. It's either going to run, or it's going to squeal its brains out, or it's going to seize up. I'll just go get the keys and we'll see what happens. Right, chaps, you're going to live this one with me. It's either going to fail or work perfectly. I think we did it. Please don't die. Literally only time will tell. If I said I was pooing myself, that would be an understatement. I think all we can hear is the timing chain. Alright, I'm going to not film this next, but I'm just going to let it run for like 10 to 15. And I'll catch you up if it's blown up. I'll let you know. If it hasn't, I'll sing out with the end episode. We've been going 5 minutes now and it still isn't dead. I consider that a pretty good win. I don't actually know what one of these running properly is supposed to sound like. All I know is one with a knock. So far we don't have a knock. I'm going to let it get up to temperature and see what happens. Aside from a weird clicking noise that's coming from whatever the hell this thing is, kind of reminds me of one of those things you found on like an EL or something, or an E-Series Falcon V8 or something, which tucks under the front guard and it ticks away. I don't know what the hell that does, but it's not a rod knock, and so far it's been going 15 minutes, I'd say, and we still haven't had a bad noise yet. That's annoying me. But that could be because now we have oil pressure and things are doing what they're supposed to. I don't really know if that's supposed to do that or not. But so far, the shonky bandaid job I've done to the bearings in the motor so far have worked. I am definitely replacing this motor down the track if I keep the car. I'll probably replace it anyway. But that proves that despite all the haters and the naysayers, people who think what I'm doing is a waste of time, it might be a waste of time, but I do have proof that it does work. For how long, I can't tell you. But I hope you enjoyed this episode and came with me on a journey of debauchery. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, you'll get a better one next time. So thanks for watching.